Wow, what a stunning response to our first meeting. Our new club was founded because there was a need for conservatives to freely discuss their issues. Our founders are myself, Mary Lou Richardson, Valley Booback, Carla, Sharon Hudson, and Carol Gibbons, who's fortunate enough to be taking a winter holiday. Valley, Sharon, Carol, and I were just part of a core group that worked on the issue of widening I-77 without tolls and on toll-free North Carolina. We also were board members on North Mecklenburg Republican Women. When we were with Widen I-77, we worked with Democrats, Libertarians, Independents, and Republicans. In an era when people are so disenfranchised with politics and politicians, we hope that our club can be a venue for we the people.
Wow, we are so grateful for all of you being here tonight. And I just want to say on behalf of Sharon, Mary Lou, and Carol and I, how grateful we are. We've had so much fun planning this meeting. We look forward to many more enjoyable, fun, conservative gatherings like this. And so I'm going to turn it over to Christian at this time.
All right, one more round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, what an amazing first event for this new Lake Norman Conservative Club. Valley, Mary Lou, thank you guys so much for sharing. Appreciate this so much. And also, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for being here. There's an old saying that politics goes to those who show up. And ladies and gentlemen, the fact that you are here taking an interest in the future of this nation is so very, very important. We hope that through the questions that are presented tonight, the ability that you have to hear firsthand from these candidates, that you're able to hear things that you like. You can find a candidate that you want to get behind, that you can back throughout this primary process, and then eventually towards our primary goal of defeating Kay Hagan in November of 2020. A couple housekeeping items. First of all, I'd like to let you know how the questions that we're going to ask tonight were formulated. There were several that were done up by members of the organizing body, and then as you came in, there were a number of cards that were handed out. We received a number of responses and questions that were asked. Many of them had some overlapping themes. New microphone. Had some overlapping themes. So what we've done is kind of combined those together. And so if you don't hear a specific question that you had written down, hopefully thematically something very similar will be asked throughout the course of the evening for the sake of time. These questions are in no particular order. The format of the event is going to be as follows. Each of the candidates will be given a 2-minute opening statement to introduce themselves to those of you in attendance. Following the introduction statements, the questions will be asked, and each candidate will have up to 2 minutes to answer each of the questions that are asked. Where's our timekeeper? Who has our sign? Right over here. All right, as 30 seconds comes down, if you could hold up the caution sign, and that will give you the indication that we have 30 seconds remaining, and the stop means, well, stop talking. With that in mind also, the way the questions will be asked, we will start with one candidate. Each candidate will have the same amount of time to answer the same question. The following question will be asked to the next candidate in line, and again we'll go down the list in that format, etc., so that at the end, everybody's had a chance to answer a question first, everyone's had a chance to answer a question last. So without further ado, introducing the candidates very quickly, to my far right, we have Dr. Greg Brannon. the middle, Heather Grant. And nearest to me, Reverend Mark Harris. I would also ask that during the course of these questions and answers that we do hold our applause. There's only so much time that we have, and we have more questions, I'm sure, than we have time. So if we can hold our applause till the end, that will help with the facilitation and the time. We can get more questions asked. I would also mention to the candidates that you do not have to use your entire 2 minutes. And the more time that we have available, the more questions that we can get asked. All right, so without further ado, we'll start on the far right. Dr. Brannon, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. It was phenomenal. Thank you for coming today. We are applying for a job. We are interviewing. This is a transparent interview. We want every question possible answered. So why am I doing this? Well, I think our State of the Union the other day shows exactly why we're running. We need constitutional leadership. We have an executive here that believes he can make law by fiat. Where's Senator Hagan? Rubber stamping that? Her oath is in Article 6. She must uphold the Constitution. I believe we're going to answer the questions, walk through the process, and look for the best person to be the best ambassador from our sovereign state. The Constitution is not a list of ideas. It limits the federal government to 18 functions in Article 1, Section 8. The Bill of Rights does not grant one single right. What it does is list God-given natural rights in which the federal government can never infringe upon. I've been honored to deliver around 9,000 babies. My wife is here, my older daughter. I have 7 children, 6 girls and a boy. Well, yeah, my wife should be up here. She's the one that's... and she's married to me, so she has 8 children. But no joke, we're all here. These are servant citizens up here asking to serve, to understand that that's what the role of government is. You do not lead by telling individuals what to do. America's phenomenal because we're the only republic in the world based upon the individual over the collective. That's what society is at its best. So today is your night. Please ask every question you have of us. And I'm so honored you guys came. Thank you.
As I mentioned, let's hold the applause until after the event, just for time's sake. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out to hear us tonight. I'm sure you could have had a little better weather to come out and join us, but we're happy to be here. My name is Heather Grant. I'm running for United States Senate because I feel like we need a change. I feel like we have got to get back to our citizen legislators. We have to have people who believe in going up and understanding that they need to be in touch with what life is like back home to be able to better serve them.
I think that's an alarm.
Sorry about that. But with that, we need people who are going to go up, do the best job they can do for the time that they're there, lay a great foundation for those who are going to come behind them, and be willing to mentor those that come behind them so that once they get there, they're not thrown to the wolves. They're not expected to go up there and stand on their own with only 1 or 2 other like-minded conservatives. I believe wholeheartedly that my military background has gotten me ready for this job, has placed me in positions before where I had to do just that, and that was navigate perception versus reality and stand for the reality that is the life we live every day here in North Carolina. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to answer your questions to the best of our abilities tonight, and you'll be able to walk away from here with a better understanding of who I am, where I stand, and what I can do for you as your next North Carolina Senator. Thank you.
All right, let's try 2. I know it's hard.
Well, you're going to do that just to me then. Thank you very much. My name is Mark Harris, and it is certainly my pleasure to be here with you this evening. And thank you for taking the time to come out and be involved in this. You know, I'm a native of North Carolina, born and raised in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Came up in a great home life. My dad, Everett, was a production planner and supervisor at Container Corporation of America, where they made corrugated boxes. Mom was a preschool teacher, and graduated from Reynolds High School in Winston-Salem and went to Appalachian State University, majored in political science. You say, I thought you were a pastor. Well, I didn't always know I was going to be a pastor. The fact of the matter is that when I was growing up, I was affected by the era in which I was raised. The Watergate hearings fascinated me as an 8-year-old boy. And then when I was 14 years old, my mom and dad dropped me off by the Americans for Reagan office on Healy Drive in Winston-Salem that had been established by Jesse Helms. And I stuffed envelopes and made phone calls. And as a result of that, had the privilege of going to Ronald Reagan's inauguration in 1981. You know, I don't know how it is around your table, but I know in my congregation where I've had the privilege of walking through life with people, people are concerned. They're concerned about our sluggish economy. They're concerned about the eroding values that we're seeing in our culture. They're concerned about a federal government that's become more and more intrusive in our lives each and every day. But I think the greatest concern I've seen is the concern that's in their faces that they feel like we've got elected leaders who just don't care anymore. My wife and I took a lot of prayer and a lot of time to make the decision to get into this race because we do care. We care about your family, we care about our family, we care about this state, and we care about this nation. And it's my desire to be able to represent you with a North Carolina voice for North Carolina values in the United States Senate. I look forward to sharing with you here tonight. Thank you.
Go ahead. Now, all right, I guess we'll start the first question. We'll start with Ms. Grant. Kay Hagan is vulnerable, if for no other reason than her support for the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare. What is your strategy for eliminating this act? How do you envision the future economics of medical care?
In getting rid of the Affordable Care Act, we have to realize that there's more than one way to do that. I firmly believe in what I learned in the military, and that's when you have a problem, you attack it from every angle that is moral, legal, and ethical. So if there are 6 paths you can choose to try to get rid of this, you take all 6. You attempt to defund it, you attempt to repeal it, and you challenge it in court. Because one of those ways will absolutely get us to the goal that we seek. It may not be immediately, but we can't stop fighting. For me, economics of our healthcare system boils down to simply what we built our country on, and that's the ability to have competition and be able to shop for what we want the way we want it. That's pretty much the American dream right there, is to be able to build your own business and have what you want. Well, with our health care, if we can do across state line health insurance, if we can open up the market and get more health insurers available with more plans available, it's more affordable and people can truly pick and choose what they need.
Well, I've been sharing across the state that I am one of those that believes you can't fix Obamacare. You need to repeal Obamacare. I wholeheartedly believe with all of my heart that when we look at the situation we have, that there's going to be immediate action that's needed. I believe we've got to pull together leadership in Washington that understands really the serious economic situation that Obamacare creates for us. We know philosophically that we have a serious concern for it. But the truth of the matter is the economics of it are just outlandish. When we look at the reality that we've got the Congressional Budget Office saying that Obamacare, under its current form, by 2023, will be spending $3 trillion on health care in this nation, and you stop and consider that all last year the total federal spending was around $3.7 trillion, then to say that in 9 years, less than a decade, that we would actually be almost doubling the size of the federal government in what we are spending, it's just not sustainable. So we do need to attack it from all different angles, whether it be economic, whether it be philosophical. But Republicans have had ideas. Heather touched on some of them. It's what we've been saying across the state. We need to be looking at solutions like expanding health savings accounts, allowing people to purchase their health insurance across state lines, and putting an end to the frivolous lawsuits that continue to drive up the cost of health care in this country year after year. We've got to work together, but we've got to be able to stand with courage in order to see that change.
March of 2010, I actually wrote an article, a paper concerning this. Understanding true federalism, if this is an attack, we can do it at the federal level and the state level. I'm an OBGYN. I understand about malpractice and frivolous lawsuits. I understand about the regulations over and over again. This goes back to the Constitution, the job we're applying for. Article 1, Section 8, there is no health care. It does not mean we're not compassionate. We are very compassionate. We know the free market truly is the best market to do that. We have to, in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1 is defunded. All bills appropriated. Repealing takes more of a process. If you defund it, it dies in the vine. We hear with people that say that's not happened. It happens every single year with the Hyde Amendment concerning federal spending for abortion. We do it every year for that. We must defund it. Number 2, Article 6, Clause 2 does not make North Carolina bend their knee at every federal whim. We have the power in Article 6, Clause 2, and the 10th Amendment to say no to unconstitutional acts. The judicial branch has no power to enforce their opinion. And since 1937, they've only said 2 laws that Congress passed that are unconstitutional. The way to go is to say with the Constitution, that's their function, the free market. The Commerce Clause, there's about 115 health insurance companies in the United States of America. If all 115 were in North Carolina competing for your dollar, prices go down, quality goes up. And one side note, in North Carolina today, if all of us want to open a hospital next door, we couldn't. We need a certificate from our legislators up in Raleigh. That's not free market. No cronyism. We need pure free market entity. What that does is it empowers the individual, and then they compete for our dollar.
Thank you. All right, the next question goes to Reverend Harris to start. We all understand that education is vitally important to the future of our nation. However, there is a great deal of controversy surrounding how education should be handled. Does the federal government have a role? And if so, what? If not, what are the alternatives? Feel free to discuss here school choice, race to the top, Common Core, or anything education related.
Well, I think the federal government certainly has shown us in recent years they're overstepping and overreaching their role and responsibility in education in this country. I'm a firm believer and have seen through the years that the closer education gets to home, the more effective that it really is. There's got to be local control of our education. The truth of the matter is, a lot of folks don't even realize when the Department of Education was formed that the reason for it being formed was to be that of a resource center. The purpose behind its forming was simply so states that had successful education programs would share that with the Department of Education, and if your state was looking for a program that perhaps had been successful and may fit in your state, you would be able to go there almost to that resource center, get that program and take it back. The challenge and the tragedy is we have seen happen with the Department of Education exactly what happens with every federal agency. It's like it gets on steroids and grows out of control to where today we have such things as Common Core that are trying to be mandated by the federal government, trying to tell the states what they are supposed to do, how they are supposed to do it, and then dangling the money, our money, over our own heads to demand that we conform to their plans or else lose the funding along the way. That's my concern. I don't have a concern with standards. I support good standards. I have a problem with federal blackmail over our state and our local governments that are demanding the conforming to the Common Core programs that we see. I believe that the closer education gets to home, the more effective it has always proven to be.
Education and schooling are 2 different things. The federal government has no role in education. My wife was a public school teacher at Head Start in New York City, Chicago, and LA. We homeschool 3 kids, we put some kids through private schools. The saddest I feel for are the public school teachers working their rear end off with these federally mandated Common Core prerogatives. These standards coming down from top down. The Governors Association, the whole idea is supposed to be from the bottom up, is complete scam. It's all talked about these plunder dollars. My question is we're not against education. We're against government-run education. It's the parents that decide. Not a single mom. She decided about schooling and education. We have to know the role of the government. Let's look back at the greatest, I think, the greatest generation of education was not our founders, but their parents that asked them to question everything, and that led to this great republic. In 1840, the average American complex literacy rate was 93 to 100%. 93 to 100%. When the federal government gets involved with mandatory schooling, what happens? It becomes now social engineering, not education. Competition. Well, if that was what's going on in North Carolina, teachers would be one of the highest paid groups of jobs out there because they compete for that knowledge. We cannot let them play this game because we're against government federally run education, we're against education. No, we have historic data and numbers to prove when it's at the home, so the parent can decide the local school, the private school, the homeschool, society is at its best. Because then education is the model, not schooling and brainwashing.
On that the Department of Education for the federal government initially started out to be a resource. And it was a good thought process, and it was a wonderful thing to have, especially for areas that were rural, because it gave them outlets to reach out to bigger areas who had more money and had the ability to try things they couldn't. Unfortunately, with the way our federal government works, they took it and they have made it into what I consider a complete and utter monster. Because our Department of Education in the federal government does not take into consideration how things are at the local level. And that what may work well in a community here in Charlotte would not work as well in a community in, say, Wilkes County, where I'm from, or in Raleigh, or Cary, or down at the coast in Wilmington, or Sunset Beach. We have got to realize that we cannot allow our government to continue to take control of our daily lives, and educating our children is part of our daily life. We have no say-so anymore in how our children are even tested or how our teachers are even peer reviewed for raises or to even keep their jobs, and that is wrong. That should be up to your state and local boards, because those are the people that see it every day and live with it on a daily basis. And that's part of the problem we see, is that day-to-day life, once you get to Washington, is not the same there as it is where we park our cars every day and walk under our own roofs. So for me, federal government has no place in education because they've already proven that they can't do what they should have done with it to begin with. And for me, we need to rescind the statutes that put Common Core into place here in North Carolina and get back to taking over our own education of our children.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Brannon, starting with you. The President has unilaterally changed elements of the Affordable Care Act, declared an anti-gay rights law unconstitutional, lifted the threat of deportation for an entire class of undocumented immigrants, bypassed Senate confirmation on controversial nominees. Early in his presidency, Obama expanded presidential war-making powers, surveillance of the American public, and extrajudicial drone strikes on alleged terrorists outside of the United States, including Americans. Has the president overstepped his executive branch authorities? And if so, what remedy is there?
Yes. Again, this goes back to the role of our government. The legislative branch, the first sentence of the Constitution, makes all laws. There are 33 functions in the legislative branch, 13 in the executive, and 6 in the judicial. These checks and balances are horizontal but also vertical. The executive's 13 functions. A funny note on that, on foreign policy, Hamilton said very clearly all foreign policy has to be with the origin of the Senate and the President together. In fact, as late as August 6th of 1787, it said all foreign policy originates in the Senate. Madison added the executive. They debated a month on that because they wanted a voice to be the only person. The only function the President has on foreign policy is literally to meet the ambassadors and the ministers. They have no authority to make foreign policy on their own. So the legislative branch, and particularly the job we're running for, the Senate, has to take back the power they're granted under the Constitution. So who holds them accountable? It's, again, the legislative branch. Also, the horizontal. The vertical is the sovereign, which is look in the mirror. That's the sovereign. The state is over the federal government in functions that are not listed in Article 1, Section 8. Madison said they're duty-bound to be protective shields when the federal government oversteps their bounds, be it executive, judicial, or the legislative. So there are functions in which we can do. The House has the power of inquiry. Every single executive thought process has to make public to the House. And our founders used impeachment as they thought nobody would ever step their bounds. They're afraid of that on their character. How else do we hold the executive or our position without that? The impeachment, the inquiry, that is crucial stuff to hold us accountable to the contract that we've signed.
Yes, he has overstepped his bounds. What people don't realize is executive orders are meant to explain things. They are not meant to create law. When he writes an executive order which creates law, he has by all means overstepped any authority he has as the President of the United States. We have one remedy to that. It's simple. The House actually brings articles of impeachment, then the Senate tries the impeachment case. Would we see him impeached right now? Probably not, because I don't know that there are enough votes in the Senate. But by God, in 2014, I'm hoping we're going to have enough. Because we need to stop a president who thinks that he can create law by simply signing a piece of paper and picking up a phone and telling somebody he's going to sign a piece of paper because he's wrong, he's wrong, he's wrong.
I would agree that indeed this president has overstepped the limits of his power without question. I think perhaps the most concerning words that we should have to the American public is what we've heard in his threat. It seems to be far more than a threat, that he has a pen and he has a phone. And those should become very concerning words in these days in which we live. Frankly, I am surprised that with a majority in the House, that we have not seen some action actually started at this particular time. But as a statement has been made, may very well be because of the reality of Harry Reid holding America hostage as he has controlled everything that rises and falls in the United States Senate. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think there's anything that should stir our hearts more and should remind us of the importance of why we're here tonight and why we're going to be involved in 2014. Elections do matter. And when we get a majority in the United States Senate, this president will be held in check or he will be impeached as President of the United States. I believe that.
All right, please, ladies and gentlemen, we only have limited time. Let's please hold our applause. Or we'll start just kicking people out. Don't make me angry. Ms. Grant, a controversial element of the recently passed Paul Murray budget compromise involved cuts to veterans' benefits. What is your view on such?
Our military veterans, disabled or just retired, should never pay the price for our government to continue to run. We should never cut anything from those people who were willing to stand on the front line and take a bullet so that we can sleep peacefully in our beds at night. There would never come a time that I would find it acceptable to cut from our military veterans in any shape, form, or fashion, because they have more than earned the benefits that our government so begrudgingly makes them fight for on a daily basis. So for me, it's a no-brainer. We don't cut from our military veterans.
Well, I would agree with that. In fact, I was just in Fayetteville, I guess it was earlier this week, and I was talking with some folks at the Fayetteville Observer, and this whole conversation about our veterans came up. And the truth is that I've been saying across this state that when you look at the issue of foreign policy, we've got to recognize that the key to a strong foreign policy in this nation is always a strong military. Because when you have a strong military, you take care of your men and women in uniform, and you take care of those that are fighting to defend us overseas and those that are protecting us here at home. When you have a strong military, you know where to draw red lines and you know where not to draw red lines. And this president, from my perspective, doesn't have a clue where the red lines start and the red lines end. You see, there's some great ideas that have come down the pike for our veterans. Things that are happening here in North Carolina, just in Harnett County recently, a veterans court that is set up to take care of veterans that are finding themselves in situations. Those are the kind of things we need to be doing, not cutting for our veterans, but rather providing some needed counsel, some needed support as they come back from risking their lives, leaving their families. I'm so thankful for ministries like Franklin Graham actually has started in Alaska. Many of our veterans returning are being allowed to go up to Alaska, and they are getting the counseling and the support for them and their wives and their husbands, and beginning to put their families back where they need to be. We need to be supporting our veterans, not cutting them short.
There's over 900,000 veterans waiting over a year for actually a decision on their health care. The bravest of ours, who actually have the grant hat, they volunteered, giving us their protective shield over us, come home, need help, and we say, get to the back of the line. To tie that over with Obamacare, if that's what is that what the federal government does with health care of our brave soldiers? What are they going to do with you and me? Think about it. Their goal is to make a decision within 6 months because they have over 900,000 waiting over a year. See, this again is when the government does not do its role. Taking care of our military is a constitutional function to defend our beautiful way of life. So what we have to do is hold them again together. I know it's like a broken record, but everything we're going to talk about today, everything, is because it's not in Article 1, Section 8. And the things that are there, they're not doing. That's why a sovereign state with Article 6, Clause 2 has to be implemented. Because in this state, we should never have these things affect our individuals. And we are the largest military bases of all 50 states. We must take care of the brave. If not, who are we?
Reverend Harris, starting with you. Critics of conservatism base many of their arguments on the idea of hate. There is a belief that Republicans hate minorities, the poor, or other classes. What message do you share with those who claim such things? How does the Republican Party better communicate an inclusive message?
Well, I think the Republican Party is certainly not the party of hate. We're the party who really believes that an individual given opportunity, an individual who is given the opportunity to flourish without the government controlling them, the government handing out to them, is an individual who will be able to grow and will be able to flourish and will be able to build a life. The truth of the matter is that the Republican Party stands on principles, and there's some serious principles that we believe in. We believe in principles that are the Judeo-Christian values in this country. We have held to that for generation after generation. And I think that we don't need to apologize for that as well. We believe in equal protection under the law. We believe that every individual should be protected under the law. We don't believe that any individual, because of race, should somehow be mistreated. Because of their sexual expression, should be mistreated. But we also recognize that in this country, we do continue to hold to those principles and values that are still so very dear to us. And from my personal perspective, so much of the division in our country has come from things that people have just created, such as just your sexual expression. I don't think there should necessarily be a protected class for just how a person chooses to express themselves sexually. That has created far more of a divide in this country than there has been that of a unity. And I think that you and I need to wake up and recognize that we'll continue to stand on principles, we'll continue to stand on values, but more than anything, we stand on freedom for the individual and for the opportunity to be able to flourish in this society and in this culture.
Republican principles, American principles, many won. This hyphen America is done by the progressives who want to divide us. When we link together, regardless of our gender, regardless of our melanin in our skin, the established progressives start to shake in their boots. Freedom and liberty is colorblind, is classless. Our 50 stars represent 50 republics based upon the rule of law. Under the rule of law, we all have equal opportunity at the beginning is what we're about. The Republican Party of 1866 passed the Civil Rights Amendment. The Republican Party in 1965 passed the Civil Rights Amendment. Martin Luther King was Republican. See, we have a great history of binding, not upon to break us up, but to bind us on the true rule of law. Again, let's run to our history, run to the facts, and never waver, because as Reagan talked about, we have the answers to liberty and freedom. Let's use those in bold colors, not pastels. The problem, I believe, is when the established Republican Party runs from our principles and try to be progressive light. When you have people in the Republican Party talking about public-private partnerships, when you have people in the Republican Party talking about amnesty, when you have these kind of things, that divides us. America is built on legal immigration, with sovereign borders, on the rule of law, and many won. That's our party. We're not going to run from it, but towards it.
Democrats would like people to believe that we hate everybody but ourselves, because we hate the old, we hate the young, we hate men if we're women, we hate women if we're men. Oh, sorry. Apologize. The Democrats would like to have people believe that we hate anybody who's not us. If you're a woman, you hate men. If you're a man, you hate women. You hate old, you hate young, you hate anybody who is not exactly you. And that's a lie. They know it's a lie. But unfortunately, people believe it because they get their message out more, and we fight among each other a lot more. We have to realize that we should be more of 80% friends and less 20% enemies. We have to agree to disagree on the points that we cannot come together on right at that moment, but stand together where it matters, on the most important point at that time, and work on our differences later, behind closed doors, not in front of a camera, not for them to have little sound bites and for them to talk about on MSNBC for the next 6 months. We're a party who love people, we love each other, we're founded on Christian values. Our Bibles tell us, God said to love everyone and you show them that love, and we do, but that doesn't make great sound bites. So we have to agree to be 80% friends, not 20% enemies moving forward, so that we can be the party of love and our future, and get us back to our founding principles.
Hi, Dr. Brannon, you mentioned a buzzword. Public-private partnerships seem to be the new way to fund infrastructure improvements. The practice is supported from the Obama administration on down to the local municipal governments. How do you compare a P3 funded project to a taxpayer funded project? What are the pros and cons? Can the private sector run government responsibilities more efficiently and effectively?
The answer is very clear here. Public-private partnership is a complete oxymoron. If you give a private company the power of the government behind it, it's a monopoly. Our toll roads. The interstate highway system is paid by an excise tax, which is in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1. It's a constitutional way to raise funds. Then you take that and you sell the left lane to a private entity. That happened in California with the Pomona Freeway. They gave them $153 million. They had to buy them out 8 years later for $265 million. The only people that benefit are those companies themselves. You asked a sort of a question here, the person was like a loaded one. Can private companies run better than government? The answer is yes, but not the way they're doing the public-private partnerships, because you're getting the worst of both. You're getting cronyism, not capitalism, cronyism, with the power of the tax to take the plunder from us to give to certain agencies. Free competition is better for everybody. Everybody. The problem is the true definition of capitalism has been changed in the last 100 years when you use the word capitalism. Capitalism has not failed us. It's cronyism who's failed us. If the government offers 3 or 4 different options and you say, oh wow, I have an option, that's not freedom. That's not laissez-faire. The free market, it would dictate. But President Obama ran in 2008 on P3s. He ran on that. I think one of the opponents, I think Mr. Till should be here to answer these questions. He's interviewing for a job. He should be here to answer these things. We know without a doubt that you cannot double tax something, take something we paid for and give it to another private company and call that capitalism. No, that's cronyism.
When you have corporations that you give government power to, what that means for those of us who live in everyday lives, like your toll road, it costs you more money. It costs you more money with very little return on that money that you're spending out. So, yes, corporations in America run better than our government. But that's also because they do not have our government behind them using our government rules and regulations. They actually abide by the free market system that built our country. So, do I think corporations can do a better job? Yes. Should our government be backing them? No, in no way, shape, form, or fashion. They should not get our tax money, nor should they be allowed to charge us for the use of things that are public. They're not private, they're public.
I would agree with exactly what we've heard here tonight. Because the truth of the matter is that when you think of public-private partnerships, it's all of the public, you and I, sharing our tax money and taking the risk for the private company to take the profits. And you and I end up left holding the bag in so many cases. Perfect example, as we said, are the whole toll road issue that we have. And it is hard for me to imagine how anyone can really reconcile in their minds that we would actually create a toll road and then put the public money and lands and everything there, but then we've already paid into a highway fund. I mean, Lieutenant Governor Dan Forrest, I was talking with him not long ago, and he spoke very clearly on this issue when you stop and think about the fact that we had a process. We had a highway fund in this state. We've been paying incredible taxes in this state through our gas tax that went into the highway fund. But we've gone through a Democratic legislature that raided that highway fund money over and over again and used it for other projects. And now that they have no money, everybody's scratching their head and saying, we've got to come up with a solution. Let's go and enter into these relationships. The truth of the matter is that's not going to work. We've got to be more patient. We've got to understand we have a process in place through highway funds. And when we've already paid the taxes to build the roads, why in the world would we want to pay tolls from now till Jesus comes and put more money into the pockets of the private businesses? It just doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. You and I become the losers in that situation. And I would oppose it.
Thank you. Ms. Brannon, 22% of the U.S. budget goes to Social Security. However, the program faces $9.6 trillion in unfunded liabilities over the next 70 years. Is Social Security an entitlement? How do we balance current obligations with the future ability to pay?
Social Security was absolutely set up as an entitlement. It was originally set up to be for those widows and disabled who had lived beyond a normal lifetime. It was for people who absolutely could in no way, shape, form, or fashion support themselves and whose families could no longer support them. So with what's happened with Social Security, our government has actually raided the fund. I don't know what you guys call that in the civilian sector, but in the military we call it a misappropriation of funds, and people go to jail for that. So for me, I absolutely think that our Social Security system has a tough road ahead. There's no way to continue to fund it, even with me paying and my children paying for it, and getting much past my parents having the ability to draw on their Social Security. We heard our president in his State of the Union speech touch on how we can fix that with my RAs, which are basically treasury bonds. And that's not the answer. What we have to look at is encouraging people to save their money, helping them to better prepare for their own retirement through their companies, through open markets, and through better actual education on financing. We cannot allow the government to continue to run this because we already know they're going to take the money wherever they can and spend it wherever they'd like to. For me, there has to be a lot of thought put into a full overhaul of Social Security, but one of the places you have to start is finding out exactly how much money's in there, where some of that went to, and can you get any of it back so that we can at least look at salvaging some of it while we come up with the best way to transition it.
I think whether or not it's an entitlement sort of seems to be generational in who you ask. If I ask somebody that's under 30 if Social Security is entitlement, they say absolutely. You ask somebody that's 55 or older, they'll say absolutely not. I've paid into that system. It's not an entitlement to me at all. I think that's important to distinguish that, because I think the answer for Social Security is one of those things that's one of those hard issues that we're going to have some U.S. senators and U.S. congressmen that are willing to be ready to take some votes that are hard votes, make some hard decisions, and will be more concerned about doing what's right than they are about how it's going to affect their next election cycle. Those are the kind of leaders we've got to put in place. I'm convinced, and I don't know all the numbers, I'm not prepared to give those to you tonight, but I'm convinced that we've got to put together a solution that is going to allow us to take folks that are over 50, 55 or whatever, and give them a way of absolutely remaining guaranteed that they're going to receive their Social Security benefits and they're going to be taken care of. They're going to be able to remain in the system. There may be a way that we're able to scale back for others that are under 50. I'll soon be 48 and come April. And my generation may very well be the big loser in Social Security, but we may be able to say that at least I took care of my parents and my grandparents with what I paid into it. But I would rather, quite frankly, have you make the adjustment on me as a man about to turn 48 and free my children aged 25, 24, and 22 up instead of continuing to tax them and put money into a system that they will never, ever see a dime out of it. So we've got to come up with a solution that will hit those generations, and it's got to be thoughtful and it's got to be productive, but it is something that we can work on and fix.
First off is Americans keep their word. Generations that had their money taken from them into this fund must be repaid. And how do we go through this process? True leadership is doing the right thing. There's only, how much money's in the Social Security fund? IOUs, there's nothing. When you look at Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security together, that's $222 trillion in unfunded liabilities. In 2011, all the money in the world was $60 trillion. It's meant to fall. The average age of death was 61 in 1933. For African Americans, it was 54. It was the worst kind of tax it could be. It was regressive tax. Hurt the poorest of the poor. For every one retiree, there's 33 workers. Now it's 2.5. It's meant to extract wealth that you cannot accumulate for your family. The answer is a constitutional dollar. What does that mean? In Article 1, Section 10, 5 and 6, must be gold and silver. From 1792 to 1913, our dollar increased over the 120 years 17% in value. So pensions were worth something. Since the Federal Reserve, a private bank, started printing fiat currency, our dollars decreased the last 100 years almost 99%. Louis Lerman wrote the book, A Case for Gold, the Gold Commission, that Ronald Reagan put him on there, has a 4-year plan to get back to a gold standard. With a gold standard, our GDP grew an average of 4% a year. We get back to that. That's being a senator. That's finding a plan that's going to fix the problem. And then what we do is we phase that out based upon our ages, pay off who we owe, and we can take it back to the private sector or to states that want to do that. But true leadership does not keep printing IOUs with fiat currency into a private bank. Real side note, our income tax only pays interest on the debt to a private bank.
What are your views on same-sex marriage? Does the federal government have a role? Do state governments have a role?
Well, obviously many of you know that I helped lead the fight for the marriage amendment here in North Carolina. I was serving as president of the North Carolina Baptist State Convention in the fall of 2011 when that went on to the ballot. I'm very grateful that the citizens of North Carolina stood strong for traditional marriage. And we put in our Constitution that marriage will be between a man and a woman, and I'm grateful that 61% of North Carolinians said, so be it. That is where we will stand as a state. My hope and prayer is that we will see judges in this country continue to uphold the right of citizens to make those decisions and make those stands. I believe each state does have its right and ability to make that choice and make that decision. And I support the state's rights to make those decisions. However, I do believe that if we continue to see a federal judiciary that is striking down what the public will of the people has been demonstrated to be over and over and over again, and if it should require federal action legislatively in order to stop the judges from being able to take such action, I would support federal action at that point. I do believe it is a state issue, and I'm grateful for the state of North Carolina, and I'm grateful that as of today, that constitutional amendment stands strong. And because, by the way, there were many that said, we don't need a constitutional amendment, we've already got a law. And I was standing strong to say, no, if it's not in our Constitution, you're one activist judge away from seeing it struck down. And all you have to do today is look at New Jersey, look at Utah, and look at other states who have traveled that route. I thank God for the citizens of North Carolina who stood when they had the chance.
Marriage is a God-given institution between one man and one woman. I also did not work like he did on, but I voted for Amendment 1. Churches are standing up for this and holding what true Judeo-Christian principles of marriage are. The family is the nucleus of society. He talked about states' rights, and that was a beautiful example of putting our state in our state constitution where we believe. We don't want Vermont or New York or California to tell us what their definition of marriage is. That goes back to the 10th Amendment. That goes back to Article 6, Clause 2. So therefore, any issue that's not a federal issue always goes back to states' rights. So that's why it was crucial that we stood firm, because we have to do that. The DOMA part, the part that did pass the Supreme Court, was Section 2 that gave us that right. My only concern with any judicial activist at any federal level is they may change their mind over time. That's why having it in our Constitution, in the rule of law, protects us. We don't have to listen to a federal judge who doesn't have the power. How do I know that? In 1788, in Virginia Convention, Patrick Henry asked John Marshall, what happens if the federal government supreme over every state law? And John Marshall became a fourth Supreme Court justice, as told Patrick Henry. He said, no, it's only supreme in Article 1, Section 8. So that's why, again, we were talking about last couple questions ago, everything we're discussing is because the federal government has overstepped their bounds. We need to make sure we have an ambassador from our state that will stand on the border of North Carolina, keep the federal government at bay for its functions, but not intrude on us. There's no doubt we have to do that, because they're going to keep on nipping and tucking everything they possibly can so we have a national government, not a federal government. We must stand up for the rule of law and protect our individual state.
Well, I think you're going to find that we all agree that marriage to each one of us is between one man and one woman. And I was so thankful when I was out in Texas to hear all about our Amendment 1 that was going to be put on our Constitution here. I was so happy when it passed. I was so excited because I knew I was coming back home to a state that had the same values and beliefs that I did. And the nice thing about that is that it is truly a state right. The nice thing about our United States of America is that we are 50 separate yet united states. And what is good in North Carolina may not be great in California, and what is wonderful for New York may not work at all for us. And the beauty of that is that we have the ability to decide for our state and enact legislation and enact constitutional amendments on our state level that fit the needs of our citizens here in North Carolina.
Dr. Brannon, what is the role of the United States government in global affairs? What duty do we have to our allies? How should we best confront our enemies?
Washington's farewell address, paragraph 30 to 37, is probably the best foreign policy ever written. as well as Jefferson, first Secretary of State in 1790, wrote a whole essay concerning this. They talked about, and also Senator Taft in 1951, talked about the idea, the role of our foreign policy is to defend the individual liberty of each individual American. Washington talked that we must be selfish for our causes. He warned to make no permanent allegiances with anybody. He said, France may be your friend sometime, another issue, it will be England. We cannot be bound by these aspects. We have to look for strategic, like Israel, the only democracy there that has our same belief system in the idea of a government. They must be protected, because that is smart to protect America by protecting Israel. Historically, look what France did for us in the revolution. But they must not be permanent, because things may change. But we have a way to actually declare war. It's through the people, through the House and the Senate. We do it. See, so it goes back to the Constitution again. Well, again, they had the debate. Can one man, a president, take us from a state of peace to a state of war? The answer is no. No. They're only there to act on the defensive part. Our foreign policy, again, it's so important to us to understand the job we're applying for is advice and consent, does not give a rubber stamp to whatever the president wants to do. It's knowing the information, the details of the treaty, how it affects Americans and American individuals. We are there from the beginning. We're going to go back and see, if we don't use our responsibility or power to be taken from other branches. That's why we must go up there and take it back, because it is ours if we defend that. But anything we do on the idea of foreign policy and permanent allegiance is for American selfish interest. And that may sound selfish, but it's actually better for the world. That's how we're the true shining city in the hill. We do that and show the rest of the world what a true republic is.
When our founders brought together the initial documents and our initial states, we were brought together for two things: trade and protection. Our founders knew that there was no way for one or two of the states to stay together and survive the foreign powers. And that's what we have to look at as we continue forward with our future. We have to protect our interests globally. We have bases that are situated in other countries, but they should be there strategically. They should be for our American protection, so that we know that we are safe here in our borders. When we look at our allies right now, we don't have a whole lot of them. And Israel happens to be one of them. And we need to stand with them. And by standing with them, we need to stop funding governments that will on Monday say they love us because we're going to give them millions of dollars and weapons, but on Tuesday burn our flag and talk about death to Americans out in their streets, and their government is okay with that. Because that, to me, is like paying your enemy to be your best friend. You never know what's going to happen. So we have to understand that our foreign policy should be based on trade and protection, and we need to stop giving away our hard-earned American dollars to countries that we know would take us out in a heartbeat with the money and the weapons that we give them.
You and I know that over the last 5 years, we have sat by and watched as this president has almost single-handedly destroyed America's reputation and standing on the world stage. Our allies tonight don't know that we have their back. I imagine Prime Minister Netanyahu has spent far too many sleepless nights, uncertain if this White House actually would have his back should Israel come under attack. Our enemies seem to be making a mockery of us. We do have a place in the global stage. Though the times have changed and the enemies and their faces have changed, we do still have a responsibility of being that shining city on a hill. I'll say he has almost single-handedly done it because, as was already pointed out earlier, we've had a United States Senate led by Harry Reid and Kay Hagan who have sat on their hands and allowed this president to do just that. We do bear responsibility to take care of our allies. We do bear responsibility to be strong and with our enemies. But it must be, particularly any action that to be taken, would only be under those things that directly affect the security of the United States of America. That is key. We had no business even considering firing missiles into Syria in order to get involved in a civil war. We have a very vested interest in continuing sanctions that would strangle Iran and keep them from being able to get a nuclear weapon. Ladies and gentlemen, it does matter if Iran has a nuclear weapon. I believe any foreign aid must be at a zero-based budgeting. It should not be guaranteed because we did this year that we'll do this next year. I agree, as Heather pointed out, we cannot continue to support the nations that continue to turn their back on the United States. I believe we need a foreign policy because we do have a role.
Ms. Brannon, America has a proud tradition of being a nation of immigrants, yet there are many in our country these days that have not crossed our borders in a legal fashion. What is your view on illegal immigration? Do you or do you not support amnesty?
For me, it's very simple. If you cross our borders and you do not do so in the prescribed legal manner, you are a criminal. You have committed a criminal act. It is no different than stealing candy from the local store or walking down and beating someone on the street and taking their money. It's a criminal act. You're hurting my nation. You're hurting my economy. I do not support amnesty for these people in any shape, form, or fashion. I do think that there should be ways for those who want to go back after admitting they're here illegally to come back in a legal fashion after, of course, paying a fine and going through background checks to include criminal background checks before coming back to try to be legal, productive citizens and residents here. For those of you who don't realize, people who come here legally, it takes them 7 years in most cases to qualify for any kind of subsidy. Illegal immigrants qualify within 30 days of arrival. They get food stamps, they get HUD housing, they get Medicaid. This is where our tax dollars are going. If you want to help get some budget freed up, right there is the first place to start looking. I have a very strong view on this because when I was in El Paso, I witnessed firsthand people who were killed because illegal immigrants were crossing the border. They would cross at night, people would die in car wrecks. They were killing and maiming farmers because they just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. These people may want a better life and I want them to have it, but there's a legal way to go about doing it.
The immigration issue that we're facing today is something that should concern every American. And I really do recognize that it's a complex issue and an issue that we must understand. But there's some very clear things that are not complex and really don't take a great deal of understanding. Number one, it starts with securing our border. Recognizing that until we secure borders, and I don't mean that just as a pat answer, we hear that all too often. But ladies and gentlemen, I find it hard to believe that if we have armies and navies that can be all over this world defending freedom and fighting wars and defending other countries, that we can't secure our own border here in the United States of America. It is not an issue of we can't. It is an issue of the will. And we have yet to see a government who will step up and have the will to secure the border. Second of all, I think it's critically important that we enforce the immigration laws we already have in place. I'm opposed to amnesty. I am opposed to the current Senate bill that was brought together on immigration. And I'll tell you, it didn't take me long to decide I was against it. Number one, because it started with the word comprehensive. Ladies and gentlemen, our federal government in Washington, D.C., excuse the English, but we do big badly. And when I read anything that begins with comprehensive, I know it is an omnibus bill that is filled with paragraphs and pages that nobody's going to read before they vote on it. Nobody's going to understand it before they vote on it. I'm opposed. Listen, comprehensive immigration legislation wants to do with immigration what they've done with health care. And any thinking person will stand opposed to it. The final issue I would say on immigration is if there is an area for reform that we need to look at, it's in looking at the temporary worker visas, because there are a number of folks that are here wanting to work, not even wanting amnesty or citizenship, but we have a labor issue, and I'm out of time.
goes back to, again, the Constitution, Article 4, Section 4, sovereign borders. America is built on legal immigration, many one. We all see the Statue of Liberty with the chains being broken away from the feudalism of Europe to come here for the opportunity for the American dream. The borders must be protected. Maybe thought with the last question about our allegiances. Get out of the United Nations. We don't need them, they need us. See, things like that put hampers on our borders. The Comprehensive Act that Pastor Harris talked about is very interesting. We have men like Rubio. We're going to have a question from when one of us win, our establishment leadership is going to tell us to bite the bullet on amnesty. They spoke about it today. So which one of us is going to buck the establishment? Which one of us is going to say, no, we're going to stand to the Constitution? That's why it's crucial we understand that document. The one Rubio supported says to protect the borders. And the comprehensive bill, I did review part of that. We're going to have drones fly 150 miles from the border inland. We're going to have drones watch over 85% of Americans to protect our borders. So-and-so. 100 miles is a constitutional free zone. Unacceptable. And illegal immigration, they are exempt from paying into Obamacare, but get the benefits. Ask the United States Chamber of Commerce. Who wants it? And Mr. Tillis is supported by them. See, that's why it's important for you to quiz us like you're doing. But sovereign borders make safe borders. Legal immigration builds a better America. We don't know the next person coming from our southern or northern borders. Maybe the guy that finds a cure for cancer builds a better, plane, a better idea of energy. As long as they use Common Core, which eliminates the Euclidean geometry and gets rid of that. We got people that don't have Common Core to come to our country to help us with physics. So legal immigration is America.
Future of America, yes, Dr. Harris. The future of America's economy is dependent on our ability to provide cheap energy and abundant energy to our citizens. What role does government have in energy policy, whether it be fossil fuels, nuclear, green power, etc.?
Well, frankly, I think the federal government needs to get out of the way on the issue of energy in so many ways, and allowing our system of the free market in order to be able to reward those who are able to advance the cause of energy here in our country. I do think that we've got to look very seriously at drilling in those areas that this federal government has stood, and this administration has stood in the way of. And for heaven's sakes, we need to look at the Keystone Pipeline. That makes the most common sense of anything I have ever heard of. And yet we've continued to see this president, and we've continued to see the Senate leadership in this country block that at every single turn. You and I need to understand that when you start thinking about departments of our federal government that really and truly have maybe gotten in the way far more than they've helped this economy going forward, you've got to immediately think of the Department of Education, you immediately think of the Department of Commerce, and you immediately think of the Department of Energy. So many folks, if you stop and think about it, talk about the regulations that are strangling small businesses and strangling entrepreneurship in this country. Without question, we are seeing that even within the area of energy exploration and the ability for the future. So I think we've got to remove those regulations in so many ways in order to free up. There's not a day goes by that I don't talk to a small businessman that talks to me about what regulations are doing to his business. And he or she has said to me, Mark, if there's anything you do in Washington, D.C., please get the regulators off our backs so we can build our businesses and freedom once again in this country.
The role of the federal government is defense. What would be the best defense than having energy completely sufficient? The way the Constitution says the federal government made money was to sell lands to states. FDR bought that back to control this. When that man found that black goo in Titusville, Pennsylvania, that became oil, became a booming economy, it wasn't the government that did that. It was free enterprise that did that. This state is blessed with gas and oil. But then we have people again in our party. In our state, we have to have 21.5% renewable energy. See, this is when the government gets involved picking what energy to study, what energy to invest in, what country does that. You get the cylinders, you get those kind of things. That's not laissez-faire economics. The free market will decide. We're not sure what the next great invention is going to be because all of our tax money is now being put in universities to go for renewable energy. We're not sure what the process to be because the free market is not dictated to do that. So we need the federal government out of that. They did not invent, the beautiful Ford, way to build a car, or Mr. Hewlett, Mr. Packard in their garage. It was the idea to think, what if? What can I do? What can I make better? The better widget is America. The better widget is American exceptionalism. The government is not here to pick winners and losers. All they do is take the plunder to pick the companies they want and contribute to them. Please look at the Dodd-Frank bill. Please look at the amount of money Obama gave to Democratic districts over Republican districts. It's a way to keep them in power. And again, Senator Hagan is rubber stamping that process and not defending the individuals of North Carolina. So what we got to do is get the government out. There's actually 176,122 federal regulations. In the Constitution, there's 3 crimes: piracy, counterfeit, treason. Let's get back to that. Let North Carolina be North Carolina.
When we look at our country's potential to be self-sustaining in energy, we have to realize that we have about 500 years worth of coal, gas, oil, and shale right under our own land. It makes no sense for us to continue to go to other countries for our energy. People talk about, what about our environment and protecting our environment? Well, fracking has come a long way. So has mining coal. We have the ability to be self-sustaining in energy if we can get our federal government out of the way. Not only do we need to worry about what the Department of Energy has said, we need to stop having a federal EPA. Your state should regulate your environmental protections because who better knows about what your state environment is than your actual state? You can even bring it down to the community level because those people know what your water looks like, what your soil looks like, what your air looks like. It's called common sense. 50 states are not cookie cutter. North Carolina does not have the same industry as California or Montana or New York, and we should not have to abide by the same regulations because what's good for them is not always good for us. We have to stop allowing regulation to put us out of business.
All right, thank you. Dr. Brannon, I believe we're back to you. There are 2 growing movements in this country. One supports the idea of state nullification of unconstitutional laws being handed down by the federal government. The other seeks an Article 5 convention for the purposes of passing clarifying amendments to the Constitution. Where do you stand on either of these?
Article 5 convention is constitutional. But understand the process of that. We have an Article 5 constitution that means everything is up. First Amendment, Second Amendment, Ninth Amendment, 10th Amendment. That is really something to think about. On the other side, we have 27 amendments, the first 10 the Bill of Rights. We don't have men and women who honor those. Are they going to honor 11 more? Process is, I think we have the same process here. What do we do? What do we do when the federal government oversteps its bounds? And that's why we got to go back to the origin of the Constitution. The example Hamilton used and Iredell used, he calls it their trustees to this contract. An example, my wife Jody and I, Riley's the trustee of my will. We have a contract, we're parties to the contract, he's the agent. We have 7 kids, we allocate the insurance money if we go to heaven early. He must do every single function on there, no more, no less. If he doesn't, he goes to jail. Article 6, Clause 2 is that linchpin. It says the Constitution, supreme law of the land and pursuant thereof. And James Iredell from North Carolina in 1788, who became the first Supreme Court Justice under George Washington, said, if Congress ever passes a law that's not enumerated, it is null and void in the state. But that power is the state legislators with the 9th and 10th Amendment and Article 6, Clause 2, holding them accountable. So I go either way. My fear is the men and women today who do not know the Constitution may make us more of a progressive society. Let's get men and women that understand the first 27, especially the first 10, and those 6 pages of the Constitution, and not waver on those. Because the state is superior in everything not listed. And I said an hour ago, everything we're talking about is because the federal government overstepped their bounds. Let's get an ambassador from this state, a Cruz, a Paul, a Lee, that says no to these things because we have the correct answer. The correct answer is hold them accountable.
There are both good points and bad points to an Article 5 convention and the use of nullification. Before embarking on either, a state and their representatives and the people must understand that there are consequences to each action. With an Article 5 convention, it is true. Every single amendment, every single piece of that Constitution is up for that convention to discuss, change, do away with, or leave the same. When we nullify something, there's 2 parts to it. You have to say, am I going to nullify and just say no and make a stand and be proud of myself for just a few 15 seconds that means nothing? Or am I going to stand up and say no, mean it, and have the wherewithal to back it? And if you are thinking about doing that and having the wherewithal to back it, then you must ensure that your state can survive without the federal government, or if the federal government turns its ugly head towards you and gives you the beady-eyed stare and threatens you with all the things that Obama and our Senate would probably threaten us with. There are consequences. We have to be prepared to know what those are before you make a decision on whether one is good or bad, or whether we should do either one or none at all. We have to research it to the fullest extent and understand every possible reaction to our initial action.
One of the things, and we were asked this question a couple weeks ago, that just to put it simply, yes, we have the ability and we have the right to be able to take such action. Would it be wise? The answer would probably be no at this particular time. Because you see, I think that so many times we spend a lot of our energy and a lot of our time philosophizing about things, discussing philosophies and discussing things that are maybe out here or out there but aren't within the realm of reality of where we live. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a real time where we have a real opportunity in our system right now to make a change. You see, I'm not convinced yet that the system is what's broke. I'm convinced the problem is it's the people we have allowed to run the system that is broken at this particular time. And what we have a desperate need for is, again, what you're doing here tonight. And to be more involved, to elect men and women to the United States Senate who believe the values and principles that you hold dear, and that are going to go to Washington, D.C. and to stand for those principles, and to do so with courage, and to do so with consistency, and to do so out of a life that is marked by character and who they are in their core. You see, I do think we need to move with wisdom, and I do think we need to move with discernment. But I think in 2014, we need to start moving beyond the philosophy and moving to the practical. And the practical says it's time to get off our butts and elect a conservative Republican to the United States Senate in 2014.
Ms. Grant, are you willing to term limit yourself?
Absolutely. I signed the term limit amendment pledge months ago. I firmly believe that part of the problem with what we have there now is the fact that we have politicians who go up there, they become politicians, and they live. A lot of people tell me that that's unconstitutional. What about the great people who are up there? And my thought process is, we have a couple, but look how many people we have up there. There are, 435 representatives, 100 senators. You want to allow people to go up there and live for 30 years on the off chance that we're going to have 3 or 4 good ones each time we elect somebody? I don't want to bank on that. I want to know that I'm going to go, I'm going to do my best for the first term. I've said I would do 2, no more. And if I can't accomplish my goal in 12 years, it is time for me to come home and let the person who's coming behind me have a fresh set of eyes, take a look at the problem, and start where I left off to keep moving us forward to getting us back to where we need to be. And that's the America our founders founded.
I think all of us, as we've talked, I'm not going to speak for all of us, but I do think as I've listened, one thing you know about all of us that are running, at least that are here tonight for this United States Senate seat, is we believe in the citizenry legislature. We believe that was the intention of our founders. Individuals that don't become professional politicians to work the system and to go up there and spend forever and a day and simply pad their pockets. My wife and I have talked a lot about this. We have certainly made a commitment ourselves, and I've shared with a number of groups that we would self-limit to 2 terms, no more than 2 terms in the United States Senate. And I do have concerns about it. I'm just going to be straight with you. The concern I have with term limits, frankly, is I am concerned if we turn Washington over to the bureaucrats even more now than they are. I know that's hard to imagine. But my concern is with a constant turnover of legislators, it takes a certain amount of time to get your feet on the ground, a certain amount of time to learn how the system works and how things move. And my fear is with a constant turnover, then you're just living at the mercy of some 25 to 30-year-old bureaucrat that graduated from Georgetown Law School and has landed in Washington, D.C., and they're calling all the shots. We got to be concerned about that. But I do think that the greater price we pay is when we do have people up there with unlimited terms, unlimited power, and continue to stay there. For that reason, in answer to the question, I have made a commitment to limit myself to no more than 2 terms in the United States Senate.
Term limits. The best term limit is our election process every 2, 4, or 6 years. I think we take away the role we have, and we can take people out or put them back in based upon us doing our due diligence. But I think maybe this time in society, maybe a 2-term might be it, because we do have career politicians up there. But I don't want to take responsibility from us. So when Mark was honest, we're torn a little bit because I don't want a bureaucrat running. We're running for a job to be the leader. We want experts in certain opinions to give us some things to read and study and articulate. But I don't want to take the role away from you and I, because Washington said the true keepers of the Constitution are we the people. And I was just thinking about the last question. We're talking about the Constitution. We're talking about exactly what this contract means. What if tomorrow an executive order, which actually formed the EPA, or the Congress passes a law like Obamacare, that says you're allowed 1 child, that's it. What will we do? See, that's why this is not just philosophical, it's real deal. They're telling you today you must buy an insurance policy or you're not a citizen. They're telling you you must do certain things or you're not part of the system. We did not give away our sovereignty to be ruled under. The other side of the coin of consent is dissent. We are the ones consenting to be governed under the rule of law, but we are also the ones who are held responsible to hold our representatives, the servant citizenry, accountable. This contract is real. It's every single day. Again, the State of the Union, we had a president say he's going to bypass the Constitution, and we heard only 2 guys, Lee and Paul, who actually said, no, we'll go back to the Constitution. Now, I said Cruz's speech as well. That's what we need. Rand has backed us in this race. We're going to look for true, pure men and women that understand this Constitution, because we don't have to bend our knee to the federal government's over Leviathan.
All right, and this is the final question for the evening, then we'll move into closing statements. The philosophy that you hold is incredibly important, and we've heard a lot of similarities in your philosophies tonight. Of equal importance is the ability that you have to successfully win an election so that philosophy can be implemented. Please describe for us your campaign organization. How much money have you raised? How many supporters do you have? What types of endorsements do you have? How will all this be translated into a viable campaign that can take on Kay Hagan in November?
Well, I don't know if I can answer all that in 2 minutes. Good night. We have a great campaign organization. I'm very thankful and proud of our leadership. In fact, many of them are here tonight. Mike Rusher, who is our campaign manager here on the ground, was the chief of staff of the North Carolina GOP under Robin Hayes, who is chairman of our campaign committee, co-chairman, along with Mary Frances Forrester. We also have Anna Bevan Gravely, who is with Americans for Prosperity, and she serves as our political director on our campaign, and she is over here. We also have Rachel Lee Brady, who is our finance director, and she also was part of our marriage amendment campaign here in North Carolina, and we're very thrilled to have her. We also have Carolyn, who is over here as well, and a recent graduate of UNC Chapel Hill, who is working as our scheduler in our campaign office. We've been recently endorsed by Governor Mike Huckabee of Arkansas, and former presidential candidate. And we are very thankful for his endorsement. Also, the Concerned Women for America have endorsed us as well. One of the things I appreciated about what Governor Huckabee said in his endorsement, he said Mark Harris is the right choice for conservatives and Republicans in North Carolina, because he sees that I will be a unifier of the party. I was asked a question recently. They said, you know, Mark, we think this race, some people think of this candidate as working with the business folks, and some people think of this candidate as reaching out to the Tea Party, and some people think of this candidate as reaching out to the evangelicals. What do you think about that? My answer is, I said, I totally reject it, and in my closing statement, I'll tell you why.
Our campaign team is a team that is working hard and have done this before. Riley O'Neill, campaign manager, 5 statewide campaigns. Nick Dyer, my political director, is deputy state for Ted Cruz. Mike Rothfeld, my general consultant, was ran in 2010 and hopefully president in 2016. We've been endorsed by Ron Paul, Rand Paul, Mike Church, Thomas Woods, Ann Coulter, Dudley Brown, National Association of Gun Rights. We have some news coming out next couple days. We're building a coalition. I am proud to be a Tea Party founder from way back when, 4 or 5 years now. I believe the Tea Party is the Constitution party in the sense of, and also the conscience of our party. In our platform, we say we're the party of the Constitution. This team has won before. They're going to win again. I think we've raised close to $600,000. We have 11,000 donations. It's a grassroots campaign, but the hard work is watching other people above watching what we've done. It shows how we've accomplished this, going, I think, 77,000 miles we've driven so far. We're working hard as servant citizens to do this. The interview process is the best part of the whole thing. Somebody asked me today, has it been hard work? I said, no, I'm loving this. We got to make a difference by stepping up and doing this. That's why I take my hat off. These people are everywhere. Heather and Mark are going around answering the same questions. That's what we're doing. But I believe unifying more of the Republican Party is the key to beat Ms. Hagan. The last PPP poll, we had 21% of African Americans backing us. I believe we'll get more independents. We may get some conservative Democrats. We got to get and unify the big tent based upon one thing and one thing only: liberty and freedom with the Constitution. We bond on the Constitution. We just blow through all these fake issues. We have the solutions on every issue based upon that rule of law.
Hopefully this won't be too long. I have a much smaller organization than my counterparts up here. My campaign manager is my husband, Michael Grant, who also has a degree in history and political science, so I didn't know anybody better to assist me on this journey than my husband, who has a degree in this and knows me better than anybody else and can't call the BS card when it needs to be called. We have a wonderful campaign committee of local people from Wilkesboro. We have a MBA who heads our committee. We have an accountant who is who heads our financial division, and then we also have a gentleman, Billy Anderson, who worked with Governor Holshouser and Jesse Helms and almost every sheriff known to man since he was sheriff in Wilkes County. So he has been our political backbone and the one who says, you don't want to do that, you really don't want to do that. And then the one that goes, wow, that's newfangled, y'all have all this new stuff. But we have a great group of volunteers. Most of our volunteers are people who have contacted us online. A lot of them, I'll be honest with you, I have never even met face to face. They're waiting for me to come into their town to do a forum like this or speak at a local event just so that we can meet face to face, and they come out and they're handing out literature and they're doing everything they can for us and helping us to raise money. We do have a couple of announcements that will be coming out in the next couple of weeks to add to our organization. So I want to say thank you for allowing us to be here and answer all your great questions, and hopefully we've given you the answers you need.
And that would bring in closing statements. Start with Dr. Brannon.
Everybody hears that every election cycle is the most important one of their time. I believe it is, because it is our time. Are we going to pass on a less free America, a less free North Carolina than we were given? Are we going to allow this federal government to intrude in every single aspect of our life? Are we going to stand up there and say no to this stuff? When Henry said, "Give me liberty, give me death," that March 23rd, 1775 date, that famous speech, he talked about peace be bought, peace and safety be bought at the prices change. He said, "Forgive it, Almighty God. Give me liberty, give me death." But what was he upset about? It was the attack on his private property, the attack on his life. The tax burden that he said I could never live under. I'd rather fight the most powerful empire the world's ever seen. He threw caution to the wind because he knew it was correct. It was less than 1%. It was less than 1%. The only role of government that Locke talked about was to protect one's private property. We're not looking for policies to move the plunder around. We're looking for freedom and liberty from the constraints of government. When America's at its best is when you have the opportunity to live your life and to succeed and fail. The greatest part about America is failing and trying to get up again. It's your neighbor helping, your church, your synagogue. The many one is what makes this country phenomenal. I believe the future is the best 40 years from now if this generation stands firm and we apply life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for every single individual born and made in God's image. Life is the most important thing. There's no such thing as quality. From the moment of conception to natural passing. A government that cannot protect life cannot give liberty and pursuit of happiness. Please join us at gregbrannon.com. The journey has been fun and we just got started.
When I came home from the military, I thought when I took my uniform off that I would have a lot less government. Unfortunately, I was wrong. I found out I have a lot more government, and this time I didn't sign on a dotted line and give up my life to it. They just kind of took it. And the problem is that we have people who are elected officials who go up there and they may say they have the best intentions. They may say that they're going to do what's best for you, but the problem is that we have too many people willing to go up there and do what's best for them and who don't take solutions with them. Now, I learned two very, very valuable lessons when I was in the military. The first one was about never telling a higher up you have a problem if you don't have a solution to go along with it. Now, that does not mean that the person that you're going to with this problem is going to take your solution, but what it does mean, it means you had to have thought about it. You had to have done more than just say, I don't like it. You had to realize why you don't like it, why it didn't work, and thought about then what you can do, how you can help change that problem and make it into something work. The other thing that I learned about in the military was mentorship. I was a second lieutenant. For those of you who are not ever been in the military before, what it means is I was a private that you had to salute. Otherwise, I had no say-so. I was placed in a position to be a branch chief, which is like a store manager, like a Walmart store manager. And in that, I had a major who thankfully was my mentor and taught me that you can accomplish things and people can stand their ground and do what's right by having people who have their back and who are willing to help them in making that decision and doing the right thing. And that's what we need for our future. We need a foundation of mentors and people who can provide solutions to move our America back to where it needs to be.
When I was asked the question, as I finished the last question I told you I would answer in the closing statement, I was asked the question, Mark, you know, when we see this election, we see it as maybe the business community over here, evangelicals over here, the Tea Party over here. How do you see yourself as a candidate? I said, first of all, I reject that because I see myself as a candidate that is running to represent the people of North Carolina and to be the nominee of the Republican Party who can be that bridge builder. You see, I reject it because when I talk about the Chamber of Commerce and the business community, I refuse to surrender them to any candidate. Because the truth of the matter is, as a pastor, there's much more to doing that for 25 years than giving a sermon on Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. I know what it is to manage small business. As I pastor First Baptist Church Charlotte, we have 3,400 members in my congregation that I deal with day in and day out. We have a budget of over $3.1 million that we have to manage. We have to make cuts when things are tough. And we have to make decisions and how to meet a payroll and how to deal with insurance such as Obamacare. You see, I've done more as a small businessman in 25 years than some candidates have as consultants with another company for many, many years. I refuse to surrender the business community because I have been a small businessman. I also refuse to surrender the Tea Party because I've come to recognize that there are many folks in the Tea Party that are not concerned just about the economic situations and just about the Constitution, but they're concerned about the freedoms we have as Americans. They're concerned about the social fabric of our culture and our society, and they are willing to stand for all of them. So that's why we've gone to Tea Party meetings all across this state. It's the reason I go to establishment GOP meetings all across this state, because we refuse to surrender any of them, because we believe beating Kay Hagan is going to take a unified Republican Party that will stand together and say, the time has come, enough is enough. And that's why I want to be your United States Senator, standing with a North Carolina voice for our North Carolina values. God bless you, and thank you for the chance to be here.
Thank you, candidates. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for being here. We hope that you've heard and learned tonight. By all means, please, if something that somebody has said has inspired you to participate, talk to the candidates, talk to their campaign teams that are here, find someone, get behind them, back them, be supportive of them, and let's lead it all the way to November. Sharon Hudson has some final announcements for us.
I just want to say, since we couldn't while they were talking, if you want to give them applause one more time for these three candidates who